Mexico is nothing like you think. Forget the usual images of beaches, tacos, and colorful streets, because Mexico hides some of the most extreme geographical wonders on the planet. From a massive asteroid crater buried beneath the Yucatan Peninsula to enormous canyons, underground rivers, volcanic peaks, and landscapes that look like they belong on another world. Some of these places are so strange that they sound completely fictional, yet every one of them is connected to the real geography of Mexico. And the deeper you go into the country, the more unbelievable the landscape becomes. So let's begin with one of the most terrifying events in Earth's history, because the evidence is still sitting beneath Mexico today. Part 25, the crater that ended the dinosaurs. Around 66 million years ago, an enormous asteroid struck what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The object was estimated to be roughly 10 to 15 kilometers wide, and the impact created the Chicxulub crater, an enormous structure buried beneath the ground and ocean floor. The crater stretches for roughly 180 kilometers across, making it one of the largest confirmed impact structures on Earth. The collision released an almost unimaginable amount of energy, triggering wildfires, enormous tsunamis, earthquakes, and massive changes to the atmosphere. So much dust and debris entered the atmosphere that sunlight was dramatically reduced around the planet. The environmental consequences helped bring the age of the non-avian dinosaurs to an end. Today, the crater itself is hidden beneath layers of rock, so you cannot simply stand there and see it. But there is a strange clue visible across the Yucatan. A huge curved concentration of cenotes follows part of the buried crater's edge, creating a geological pattern that reveals the scar left by the impact. In other words, one of the greatest catastrophes in Earth's history is still written beneath Mexico. Part 24. The canyon system that challenges the Grand Canyon. Deep inside the Mexican state of Chihuahua lies Copper Canyon, known locally as Barranza del Cobre, and it is not actually a single canyon. It is an enormous network made up of several interconnected canyons carved through the mountains over millions of years. Some sections reach depths of more than 1,800 meters, placing them in the same league as some of the deepest canyon landscapes in North America. The entire system also covers an enormous area, creating a landscape of cliffs, forests, rivers, and isolated valleys. But the geography becomes even more impressive when you realize that people have adapted to this extreme terrain for generations. The Suraramuri people are famous for their extraordinary endurance and their ability to travel long distances across the rugged mountains. Their traditional relationship with this landscape shows just how dramatically geography can shape human life. And beneath another part of Mexico, an entirely different world is waiting. Part 23. The Underwater Cave World. Beneath the jungles of Quintana Roo lies one of the most remarkable underground environments on Earth. The Yucatan Peninsula is filled with underwater caves, connected through an enormous network of flooded passages. Explorers have mapped hundreds of kilometers of these submerged tunnels, revealing a hidden labyrinth beneath the surface. Many of these passages connect to cenotes, natural openings that act like entrances into the underground water system. Divers can travel through crystal-clear water surrounded by ancient rock formations, fossils, and enormous chambers. What makes this system even more important is that it forms part of the Yucatan Aquifer, an underground freshwater system essential to ecosystems and communities across the peninsula. So while tourists see forests and beaches above ground, an entire freshwater world exists underneath their feet. And Mexico has another underground formation where the distance from the surface becomes almost impossible to imagine. Part 22. The Cave that Drops into Darkness. In San Luis Potosí, a gigantic natural shaft known as Sótano de las Golondrinas opens suddenly into the ground. The vertical drop reaches roughly 376 meters, creating one of the most spectacular cave entrances in the world. The shaft continues even deeper into the underground system, reaching hundreds of meters below the surface. Standing at the edge gives the impression that the ground has simply disappeared. Birds regularly circle through the enormous opening before disappearing into the darkness below. For explorers and extreme adventurers, the cave has become famous for its sheer vertical scale and dramatic atmosphere. But Mexico's geography does not only go down. Sometimes it reaches astonishing heights. Part 21. North America's Giant Volcano. Rising between the Mexican states of Puebla and Veracruz is Pico de Orizaba, the highest mountain in Mexico and the tallest volcano in North America. Its summit reaches roughly 5,600 meters above sea level, towering over the surrounding landscape. The mountain is a massive stratovolcano with snow and ice near its summit, creating a dramatic contrast with the warmer regions below. On exceptionally clear days, its enormous silhouette can be seen from far away. For climbers, reaching the summit is a serious challenge because altitude, cold, snow, and steep terrain all become major obstacles. The volcano is also part of Mexico's long history of volcanic activity, which has helped shape the country's mountains, valleys, and fertile soils. And if you think a mountain rising thousands of meters into the sky is strange, wait until you see what is hiding inside another Mexican sinkhole. Part 20. The Blue Sinkhole with Floating Islands. In the state of Tamaulipas lies Zacaton, an enormous water-filled sinkhole surrounded by dramatic vegetation. Its vertical depth reaches hundreds of meters, making it one of the deepest known water-filled sinkholes on Earth. For a long time, exploring its deepest sections was extremely difficult because of the depth, pressure, and darkness. Scientists eventually used advanced technology, including robotic equipment, to investigate and map parts of this extraordinary environment. But Zacaton has another feature that makes it look almost impossible. Small, floating grass islands can move across the surface of the water, carried by wind and currents. Seen from above, the combination of deep blue water and drifting vegetation makes the sinkhole look like a giant eye in the landscape. And Mexico has another geological story where an entire piece of land is slowly moving away from the mainland. Part 19. The peninsula that is still moving. Baja California stretches for roughly 1,200 kilometers along Mexico's northwest coast. Today, it looks firmly connected to the continent, but its geological history tells a very different story. Millions of years ago, the region was connected differently to mainland Mexico before tectonic forces gradually reshaped the area. The opening of the Gulf of California separated Baja California from the mainland and created the dramatic geography we see today. The peninsula continues to move as the tectonic plates beneath the region shift. This same geological activity helped create rugged mountains, deep coastal waters, and dramatic cliffs. The surrounding Gulf of California is also extraordinarily rich in marine life, earning it the famous nickname, the Aquarium of the World. But one of Mexico's landscapes looks even less like Earth. Part 18. The desert that looks like another planet. In Sonora lies the remarkable El Pinacate and Gran Desierto de Altar, a landscape filled with volcanic formations and enormous sand dunes. The region contains hundreds of volcanic features, including cinder cones and huge craters scattered across the desert. From above, some of these formations look almost artificial, as if giant footprints had been stamped into the surface. The landscape was so similar to extraterrestrial terrain that it became useful for space exploration training during the Apollo era. Then there are the enormous sand dunes, some rising hundreds of meters above the surrounding desert. Imagine standing at the bottom of a dune that rises like a giant wall, with volcanic craters and dark lava fields stretching around you. It is one of those places where Earth genuinely looks like another planet. And offshore from Baja California, another natural wonder attracts one of the ocean's most famous predators. Part 17. The Great White Shark Island. Far from the Mexican mainland lies Guadalupe Island, a volcanic island surrounded by deep Pacific waters. For years, it became famous as one of the world's most important locations for observing great white sharks. These enormous predators were attracted by the rich marine ecosystem around the island, including populations of seals and sea lions. Divers once traveled here specifically for the chance to see great white sharks at close range from protective cages. The area later became subject to major conservation restrictions in an effort to protect the ecosystem and reduce harmful practices. Today, the island remains an important refuge for wildlife and a fascinating example of how isolation can create unique ecosystems. But Mexico's geological wonders are not finished yet, because deep inside Chiapas stands a structure that looks almost impossible to have formed naturally. Part 16. The Giant Arch of Stone. Hidden inside the remote landscape of Chiapas is Arc of Time, an enormous natural limestone arch carved by geological processes over millions of years. The structure rises dramatically above the surrounding canyon, creating the impression of a gigantic doorway made entirely from rock. Its immense dimensions make humans look tiny when standing beneath it. Kayakers traveling through the surrounding canyon can experience the strange feeling of moving through a natural stone cathedral. Water, erosion, and time slowly shape the limestone into this extraordinary formation. And Mexico's mountains contain another surprise because some of them were not originally mountains at all. Part 15. The mountains that used to be underwater. Millions of years ago, parts of northeastern Mexico were covered by a warm, shallow sea filled with marine life and coral reefs. Over enormous periods of time, geological forces lifted and folded these ancient deposits into mountains. Today, rocks in the Sierra Madre Oriental can contain fossils that reveal their marine origins. That means some landscapes where hikers now walk through cliffs and valleys were once beneath an ancient ocean. The transformation from coral reef to mountain range shows how dramatically Earth's surface can change over geological time. And then there is a structure that looks like an ordinary hill until you discover what is hiding underneath. Part 14. The Pyramid Hidden Under a Hill. Near the city of Puebla stands the Great Pyramid of Cholula, one of the most remarkable archaeological structures in the Americas. From a distance, it can look surprisingly ordinary because vegetation covers much of the structure. But underneath that hill is an enormous ancient pyramid complex with a gigantic base. By volume, it is considered one of the largest pyramids ever constructed. The monument grew through several stages as different cultures expanded and rebuilt the site over centuries. At its height, Cholula became a major religious and cultural center. Later, a church was constructed on top of the pyramid, creating one of the strangest combinations of ancient architecture and colonial history in Mexico. And if that combination seems unusual, the country's volcanic rocks become even stranger when viewed up close. Part 13. The rock columns that look man-made. Atmoprismus basalticos. In Hidalgo, enormous hexagonal columns of cooled volcanic rock rise beside waterfalls and cliffs. The columns can reach dozens of meters in height and appear almost perfectly organized. From a distance, they look like gigantic stone pipes constructed by an ancient civilization. But their geometric appearance is entirely natural. As volcanic lava cooled, it contracted and cracked into distinctive polygonal patterns. Over time, erosion exposed the columns and created the dramatic walls visible today. Waterfalls then added another layer of movement to the landscape, flowing directly over the dark volcanic rock. The result is a place that looks less like a natural formation and more like a giant stone cathedral. And Mexico has another body of water whose shape and clarity make it look almost unreal. Part 12. The Crescent-Shaped Lagoon. Near Rio Verde in San Luis Potosi is Media Luna, a spring-fed lagoon famous for its unusual shape and remarkably clear water. The warm spring water maintains a relatively stable temperature throughout the year, making the lagoon especially popular with swimmers and divers. Beneath the surface are underwater caves, rocky formations, and freshwater ecosystems. The exceptional clarity can make divers feel as if they are floating through glass-clear water. The lagoon also supports plants and aquatic animals that have adapted to its warm spring environment. But Mexico's water does not always remain calm. Sometimes it explodes into the air. Part 11. The Ocean That Shoots into the Sky. Near Ensenada, Baja California, lies La Bufadora, one of Mexico's most spectacular marine blowholes. When waves force water and compressed air through an underwater opening, the pressure can launch a massive column of seawater into the air. The result is an explosive burst that can rise dozens of meters above the ocean. The sound can be enormous, especially when large waves arrive at the right angle. Visitors gather along the cliffs to watch the ocean seemingly erupt like a geyser. It is a perfect example of how simple geological structures can create spectacular natural events. And from the ocean, we move to one of the largest urban environments in the Americas. Part 10. The city built on an ancient lake environment. Mexico City has grown into one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world, with more than 20 million people living across the wider urban region. But the modern city hides a remarkable geographical history. The Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan was built in a lake environment, surrounded by water and connected by causeways. Over centuries, the landscape was dramatically transformed as the city expanded and the original lake system was reduced. Today, millions of people live across the enormous basin surrounded by mountains and volcanoes. The geography of the valley continues to influence the city through its altitude, climate, water systems, and urban development. And outside this massive metropolis lies Mexico's largest natural lake. Part 9. Mexico's largest lake. Lake Chapala stretches across more than 1,000 square kilometers, making it Mexico's largest natural lake. Its waters support fishing communities, wildlife, migratory birds, and surrounding ecosystems. The lake also plays an important role in the region's water supply and local economy. Along its shores are towns that have developed around the lake for generations. At sunset, the enormous surface can appear to merge with the horizon, creating a landscape very different from the deserts and mountains found elsewhere in Mexico. And another body of water has a very different job. It helps define an international border. Part 8. The river that becomes a border. The Rio Grande, known in Mexico as the Rio Bravo, stretches for thousands of kilometers through North America. For a long section of its course, the river forms part of the border between Mexico and the United States. Its path crosses dramatically different environments, from dry desert landscapes to fertile agricultural valleys. Communities, farms, wildlife, and ecosystems have developed around its waters. The river therefore acts as both a natural geographical feature and a powerful political boundary. But Mexico has another place where geography and human stories create an atmosphere that feels almost like a horror movie. Part 7. The Island of the Dolls. Deep inside the canals south of Mexico City is Isla de las Muñecas, the Island of the Dolls. Trees and structures across the island are covered with old, damaged, and decaying dolls. According to local stories, the tradition began with a caretaker who discovered a doll in a canal and placed it on a tree. The story became associated with the tragic drowning of a young girl, although parts of the legend remain difficult to verify. Over the years, more dolls were added until the island became famous for its disturbing appearance. Today, the blank faces, broken bodies, and tangled limbs create an atmosphere unlike almost anywhere else in Mexico. From the darkness of the canals, we now move towards something invisible that crosses the country. Part 6. The Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer crosses northern Mexico, creating an invisible geographical line with major astronomical significance. At certain times of the year, the sun can appear almost directly overhead in locations along the tropic. Objects can then cast extremely short shadows, creating a strange visual effect. But the line is more than an astronomical curiosity. Its position helps mark an important transition between different climatic and ecological conditions. Mexico, therefore, contains an extraordinary range of environments within a single country, from tropical forests to deserts and high-altitude mountain landscapes. And one reason for this diversity is hiding in plain sight. Part 5. Mexico is a mountain country. Mexico is often imagined through beaches and coastal landscapes, but much of the country is dominated by mountain ranges. The Sierra Madre Occidental stretches across the west, the Sierra Madre Oriental dominates the east, and the Sierra Madre del Sur rises through the south. Across central Mexico, the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt adds another chain of enormous peaks and volcanoes. Cities and towns are often surrounded by steep mountains, deep valleys, and high plateaus. These conditions have shaped transportation, agriculture, settlement, and even the way communities developed. Roads and railways must cross dramatic terrain, while volcanic soils have helped create fertile agricultural regions. And among these mountains stands a gigantic monolith that looks as if it was placed there by hand. Part 4. The Giant Monolith of Peña de Bernal. In the state of Querétaro rises Peña de Bernal, an enormous rock formation that dominates the surrounding landscape. Its steep walls rise hundreds of meters above the plain, making the monolith visible from a great distance. The formation is composed of volcanic rock and has become one of the most recognizable natural landmarks in Mexico. Local traditions also give the mountain cultural and spiritual significance. For visitors, reaching the upper sections provides spectacular views across the surrounding landscape. But Mexico's ancient civilizations created something even more precise than a giant natural rock. They created a structure that could turn sunlight into the shape of a serpent. Part 3. The Snake of Light at Chichén Itzá. At Chichén Itzá, the Pyramid of Kukulkan produces one of the most famous astronomical effects in the world. Around the equinoxes, the angle of the setting sun creates a pattern of light and shadow along the pyramid's staircase. The result resembles a giant serpent moving down the side of the structure. This extraordinary effect is connected to the Maya understanding of astronomy, architecture, and the movement of the sun. The pyramid itself contains a remarkable numerical relationship, with its 4 stairways and platforms corresponding to the days of the solar year. For the Maya, the structure was more than architecture. It was a way of connecting Earth, sky, and the sacred world. And beneath Mexico's modern landscape lies an even older geological story. Part 2. Mexico was built from pieces of ancient worlds. The land we now call Mexico was not formed as a single simple block. Over hundreds of millions of years, fragments of ancient crust and volcanic regions collided and became attached to larger tectonic plates. This geological process helped create Mexico's incredible diversity of rocks, mountains, basins, and coastlines. Different geological regions developed through collisions, volcanic activity, erosion, and the movement of tectonic plates. That is one reason Mexico can contain such radically different landscapes within relatively short distances. From volcanic peaks to sedimentary plains, tropical coastlines, deserts, and mountain valleys, the country is essentially a geological patchwork assembled over immense periods of time. And finally, we arrive at one of Mexico's most spectacular volcanic landscapes. Part 1. The volcano with hidden crater lakes. West of Mexico City rises Nevado de Toluca, an enormous ancient volcanic massif reaching roughly 4,600 meters above sea level. Its summit contains a remarkable crater landscape where 2 high-altitude lakes sit inside the volcanic caldera. These lakes, known as Laguna del Sol and Laguna de la Luna, are surrounded by steep volcanic slopes and high-altitude terrain. At more than 4,000 meters above sea level, they belong to a very unusual category of crater lakes. The contrast is extraordinary. A landscape shaped by ancient volcanic eruptions now contains clear mountain lakes surrounded by rugged peaks. For pre-Hispanic civilizations, the area also held spiritual importance and was associated with rituals and sacred traditions. And that brings us back to the bigger picture. Mexico is not simply a country of beaches and colorful cities. It is a country shaped by asteroid impacts, tectonic collisions, volcanoes, ancient seas, underground rivers, giant canyons, and mountains. Its geography tells stories that stretch from the age of the dinosaurs to the rise of civilizations and the modern world. And the strange part is that these are only a fraction of the geographical mysteries hidden across the country. If you enjoyed discovering Mexico from this completely different perspective, there is one simple way to help this channel continue creating videos like this. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Because every new subscriber gives the channel more strength and helps these videos reach people who love discovering the world. And don't forget to check the link in the description for the channel's giveaway, because you might find something worth entering. Mexico has shown us that the most unbelievable places are often completely real. And once you start looking beyond the postcard version of a country, the map becomes a lot more fascinating.